Thank you again for being here. This is the third quarterly meeting for this commission. There's a lot of ground to cover on the agenda this evening. I want to first, though, talk about, in case I haven't mentioned it, I imagine you can see me. I am Jason Goodrick. I am the Executive Director of the Community Police Commission, and I've been in that position for 3 years. I am part of the full-time commission staff. We have other staff here on the call with us this evening. If you haven't been through one of our meetings before, I will generally go through a few housekeeping rules here, and then I will turn it over to the commission for their official business on the agenda this evening. So starting with, if you logged in with WebEx or you're calling in by phone, you'll be muted for most of this meeting unless you're a panelist who is speaking, or when we get to the Q&A session, if you're in the question queue, you'll be unmuted to ask your question or make your comments. If you're on the phone, to mute your line, press *6, and unmute is *6 as well. And then as we move into the question and answer sessions during today's meeting, one will be during our presenter time this evening at the conclusion of his presentation. For the Superintendent of Internal Affairs, Ron Bakeman, is with us. At the conclusion of his presentation, you'll have an opportunity to ask Mr. Bakeman question. We'll let the commissioners ask questions first. The panelists will ask questions first, and then the public that's on attendance will be able to follow up with questions secondly. And then again, there's always an open public comment period at the near the conclusion of the business. That community will be able to make comments and answer questions. So if you'd like to ask a question and you're on your computer or device, please use the chat feature to type your questions, and we'll have those, we'll take them in the order most likely they're received. And our host will get to those questions for commissioners. So we'll be monitoring and reading the questions as they were submitted out loud. For those on the phone to also hear, that will be done by our community engagement coordinator, Ms. Shelley Williams, who is also on the call. Okay, if you're dialing in and you don't have a chat option and you're on the phone and you have a question, you can take down this number, and that number is 216-857-3114, 216-857-3114. And text your questions, and that goes directly to Shelley, and she will read those questions out. And if you would like to speak and ask your questions in person during the Q&A, there's a feature called Raise Your Hand. If you're logged in, you'll see a little hand icon on your control panel, and you should be able to raise your hand. If you can't find it, please type it in chat, and the host will help you with that. And also, if you're on the phone, if you press *3, it will raise your hand in the meeting, and we'll see that, and we'll call you as soon as you're in the queue. Okay, so once again, thank you all for being here. We have quite a busy agenda this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to our co-chairs to take over the commission business.
We are so excited to have you join us in our quarterly meeting of Cleveland Community Police Commission. I am Pastor Frederick Knuckles. I will be facilitating this meeting tonight with our co-chair, Richard Jackson. On behalf of both of us, we certainly are glad that you took the time tonight in the midst of one of two major pandemics that our country is experiencing. Certainly the one is COVID-19, but the other is the fact that we are suffering from institutional racism, which has now been and is being addressed throughout the country. And we're excited and ashamed at the same time that the city of Cleveland and the county has had to declare this as a public health crisis. So thank you for joining us in the midst of two pandemics that our country is experiencing. Co-Chair Jackson, would you like to make any opening remarks? muted, Chair.
Okay. I guess I'm unmuted now. Yes, thank you everyone for attending. I think we have a lot of information to cover with you all, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve you in this position. Reverend Knuckles.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We have a packed agenda, as you can see. We will certainly share. We will move expeditiously through the agenda. However, your voice and concerns are of great importance to us. And again, we thank you for joining us tonight. We are glad to have with us tonight from the City of Cleveland, the City of Cleveland Internal Affairs update by Ron Bakeman, who is the Superintendent of Internal Affairs with the Cleveland Police Division. We're going to welcome here tonight for him to give us an update from the Cleveland Police Department. Thank you, Mr. Bakeman.
Now, can everybody hear me? Okay. Again, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for inviting me to your meeting. I will try to share where Internal Affairs has gone during the past 3 years in which I have been the superintendent. But before I do that, I'd just like to give a little bit of a background and maybe regale in an old story with Professor Katz. In fact, I will start with that. A couple years ago, or a number of years ago, I was having lunch. There was 3 of us from the U.S. Attorney's Office having lunch with Professor Katz. And he was well aware of the fact that we were all with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we were telling him how he played such a crucial role in our career paths. And when we said that, Lou Katz sort of put his head down and said, "Where have I gone so wrong?" But again, it's been great knowing Professor Katz, and he certainly has had a great influence on a number of people who have graduated from Case. A little bit about my background. Shortly after I graduated from law school, I started with the Legal Aid Society, the Public Defender's Office. From there, I went to the state, John T. Corrigan, as a state prosecutor for a period of time. But I spent most of my career with the Department of Justice as an assistant United States attorney. I spent most of my time with organized crime and drug trafficking. I was the supervisor of the OSADEP program, asset forfeiture, and the national security unit. So that is my background, and that's how I have tried to approach my role as the superintendent of internal affairs. Going back to my appointment and reviewing the consent decree, one of the big issues that the community had, as well as Department of Justice, was how long it was taking for internal affairs to complete their investigations. And clearly there are a number of reasons why it took a period of time. When I took over, there were insufficient resources assigned to the internal affairs unit, and we had to deal with the quality of the resources. I'll talk more about that, but let it suffice to say at this juncture that just because you're an outstanding police officer and can do certain things well, that doesn't mean that you're a best fit with internal affairs. But delays with internal affairs investigations not only rest with the Cleveland Police Department. One of the things that we need to be reminded of is that all of our criminal investigations are reviewed by prosecutor's office, and many times those reviews take an extended period of time. So that's one of the reasons that you may find delays in our investigations. The second one is if there is a criminal prosecution, we generally do not go public with our administrative findings until the completion of the criminal prosecution. And we'll talk more about that. And obviously right now, since March or spring of this year, COVID has had a profound impact on not only society in general, but a profound impact on the criminal justice system. When I started with internal affairs, it was February of 2018. I'm going to use as a benchmark 2017. In 2017, there were 7 sergeants assigned to internal affairs. During that year, internal affairs opened 129 investigations. It took an average of 313 days to complete an investigation in 2017. There are 2 cases which sort of exemplify the problems and the delays, and they're both still open. One is a case where a police officer or officers used deadly force. The investigation was completed and referred to an outside prosecutor. And I need to say at this juncture, if you don't already know, but the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office has traditionally referred to outside prosecutors any use of deadly force by Cleveland police officers. And quite frankly, that does build in additional delay. But in this case, that case was referred to an outside prosecutor before I even started, and we still do not have a ruling from that prosecutor as to the use of deadly force. Another open case is a case of excessive force. The police officer was charged with assault, but the police officer has not been tried yet. Part of the lengthy delay is that he appealed the court's ruling denying his motion for qualified immunity. That case went all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court, and now we're under a COVID delay. But the bottom line is I'm not here to defend where the Cleveland Division has been at fault for these delays, but the truth of the matter is that a number of the delays are outside of our control. So what has changed since I started here in 2018? First of all, I now have what we call an officer in charge. He is a lieutenant. Before he took this position, he was experienced in internal affairs. He's a veteran police officer and well equipped to handle the position of officer in charge. We've also gone from 8 sergeants assigned to the unit to 7 to 8, and within the next 30 days we will get our 9th officer. But the important thing is we've had a change or turnover. Only 2 of the original 7 are still here. And I need to emphasize this, is that not every highly competent, capable officer with integrity is a good match for internal affairs. One of the critical things for a good internal affairs sergeant is the need for them to be able to put pen to paper. They can be outstanding officers and write crime reports, but there's a big difference between writing a crime report and preparing a final internal affairs investigation report that sometimes average 40 or more pages. The officers that are in here now are all excellent writers, of high integrity, and all have outstanding investigation skills. So as you will see, as we've morphed in to today, that the quality of our investigations have increased and the time has dropped dramatically. So let's talk about where we're at statistically. Did I lose people? Are people hearing me? Okay. In 2017, Internal Affairs opened 129 cases. As of September 24th of that year, they had 82 cases. 2018, Internal Affairs opened 116 cases, and as of September 24th, there were 78 open cases. 2019, last year, we opened 123 cases or investigations, and as of September 24th, we had 86 cases. Obviously, this year, the total number of cases that we're going to open is unknown, but as of today's date, we have opened 91 investigations, which is the highest number in the last 4 years. So let's talk about the average day of completion it took to complete these investigations. In 2017, as I said, it took 313 days to complete the internal affairs investigation. In 2018, we reduced that, my first year here, to 260 days to complete an investigation, which is a decline of 53 days from 2017. 2019, my first full year with internal affairs, we reduced the number of days to completion to 161 days, which is 152 days to completion, reduction from 2017, and a reduction in 99 days from the year before, 2018. 2020, thus far, the average day for completion of our investigations is down to 68 days. That is a decline in 245 days to completion the year before I started here, 192 days when I first started with internal affairs. Really, I believe that we are trending in the right direction, and it is my expectation that for the 2020 cases, at the close of that year, that both the division, Department of Justice, and the monitoring team will see a significant improvement in the number of days it takes for internal affairs to complete an investigation. So I think we are trending in the right direction. I think we are clearly trying to address the concerns that the community had in that we get our investigations done in a timely fashion. Questions that are often asked to me are, what kind of cases does internal affairs handle? First of all, we handle all FIT callouts. FIT is the abbreviation for Forced Investigation Team. That team, consisting of internal affairs investigators and homicide investigators, investigates all level 3 uses of force. Most prominent of those are where officers use a deadly force. An example was just earlier this week, we were called out to the shooting. It was not deadly force, but the shooting at one of the CMHA facilities where a CMHA officer shot an individual. We also engage in investigations of misconduct. Misconduct is broken down into 3 categories. Category 3, which are the most serious allegations of misconduct. Internal Affairs handles all Group 3 allegations of misconduct. We also handle all allegations of criminal misconduct. As to Group 2 misconduct, the presumption is that Internal Affairs takes them, but I have the discretion in allowing the districts or other units or bureaus to conduct the investigation. I'll be quite candid at this time because of the number of cases that we're taking and with the resources currently assigned to Internal Affairs, that a number of the Group 2 investigations are I'm reassigning to the districts and bureaus. But all those investigations, as the superintendent, I monitor those investigations and review the recommendations made in those investigations. So although Internal Affairs may not be doing the investigation, I am still involved in the process. In Group 1 violations, again, the presumption there is those will be handled by the districts, bureaus, and other units. Also, we get cases from OPS. So if a citizen has a complaint, and the complaint to OPS has 2 prongs, one administrative and one criminal, OPS, because they have no jurisdiction to investigate criminal complaints. They refer those complaints to internal affairs. I assign them to an internal affairs investigator. We conduct that investigation and present it to a prosecutor. Once the prosecutor reviews the investigation and makes a ruling, we return the case to OPS in order that they may conduct their administrative investigation. I talked that we do conduct all the allegations of serious misconduct. I will at least identify that serious misconduct is defined as involving a breach of civil rights, bias policing or discrimination against a protected class, dishonesty, brutality, corruption, or where the use of force was objectively unreasonable, unnecessary, and disproportionate. Internal Affairs, like I said, handles all of those allegations and conducts all of those investigations. What I'd like to do is use as an example of an investigation that we conducted that received considerable publicity, but I understand that one of the concerns that not only the commission, but the public and people who file complaints with us may have is that, hey, look, I've got a long record, I'm uneducated, I'm this or that. The Internal Affairs Department is not going to give a hoot about my complaint about a police officer engaging in misconduct. And I know I'm not going to be able to dispel those beliefs overnight, but clearly it's my fervent hope that during my tenure here that we can start to get into that issue and to dispel it. So I'd like to talk about one investigation. The complaint in that case was a heroin addict who prostituted herself to support her heroin addiction. And not to anybody's surprise, she was arrested by the county sheriff's department along with another individual for state law drug violations. And one of the first things, not surprising, that she said to the deputy sheriff arresting her, saying, hey, I know about police misconduct, I know about police corruption, I'm willing to cooperate. And so the sheriff contacted me, and I immediately sent an investigator out, when I say out, but over to the county jail to interview the person. And basically, she told us that she was having sex, was being paid for having sex by an officer on duty, that the sexual encounters occurred in a division of police vehicle. She described the officer as a sergeant, did not know his name, and that he drove an SUV, and that he lived in the 1st District. I didn't remember where the house was. We could not provide much of a description. She was able to provide us with rough dates and times of the sex, but that's all that we had to go on. So we had some vague allegations from a prostitute and heroin addict. The officer that was assigned to that case gathered all the duty reports of sergeants and compared duty reports with the rough dates that she was able to provide us for when the sex acts occurred. And then, having identified various sergeants who were on duty at those particular times, he then used the AVL, which traces the police cars, and the AVL corroborated the movement of the police car that was consistent with what the woman had told us. Then the officer went with the county prosecutor. We are working very carefully with them, and we obtained a search warrant for social media on his cell telephone. He was using Facebook Messenger to contact prostitutes. All in all, we identified over 2,000 women that he identified that he was contacting to have sex. Interestingly and amazingly, he was conducting most of this communications on Facebook on a city computer. The sergeant was prosecuted, sent to jail. He was forced to surrender his police certificate, his OPATA police license, and he was forced to retire. And so as it ended up, we had multiple witnesses in addition to the complainant who made many of the same allegations. And like I said, I want to sort of bring this case up is that I think one of the things I'm most proud of the people who are in the unit is irrespective of who the person is, who the complainant is, we are taking the complaint and we are using all of our resources to engage in that investigation. I know there's still going to be the belief out there that we're going to ignore or just give a quick slide of the hand to certain complaints. It's certainly one of my fervent hopes that during my tenure here, we can at least start to reduce that belief and that people who file complaints with internal affairs will feel that they're given a fair shot as to these complaints. I'm almost done here and open it to questions. I'd like to, which is following up on the on our investigations, the good news and the bad news for community members. Historically, Internal Affairs has not notified civilian complainants of the results of the investigation into their complaint. Obviously, this is a serious issue. It was recognized by the monitoring team and the Department of Justice, and we within the division and myself, as we drafted with our partners the Internal Affairs Manual, we incorporated into that manual the requirement that Internal Affairs will provide written notice to all civilian complainants of the results of their investigation. So that's the good news. The bad news is this section has not been fully implemented. I have provided some written notice to some people, but I'm in the process. We just recently hired an administrative assistant. It's going to be her job, and working with the chief's office is that my goal is by the end of this year that all civilian complainants will be notified of the results of their investigation into their complaints. That's my goal by the year end. I will agree that this is an ambitious goal. I may not quite reach that goal, but that certainly is my hope. And obviously going forward, once we catch up, that going forward, this will be a much easier process in notifying community members of the results of their complaint. And we will keep them advised as to if there's a positive result in that complaint, as to the results of any chief's hearings, director's hearings, and any appeals of those rulings. One of the things I want to make clear, I think there's some confusion out there. Internal Affairs does not make recommendations as to discipline. Discipline rests within the prerogative and the discretion of the chief and the safety director. What Internal Affairs does do is that we make findings of fact. We report those findings of fact in our investigative report to the chief or safety director, and we make recommendations as to potential charges, where they call them specifications in our report. So we will recommend specifications. In lay terms, they can best be understood as we recommend charges against the police officers. Our recommendations go to the chief, and he reviews those recommendations. I will say whether it's, but that he and I have been on pretty much consistent in our beliefs as to the recommendations that we are making. And I have had private conversations with him about certain beliefs about discipline. We have engaged in a lot of training. I think we've come a long way in the last 3 years relative to training. The FIT team, homicide and internal affairs investigators will also receive considerable training in the next 12 months, all of which will hopefully make us all the better to respond to our force investigations. I know I've covered a lot of ground. I know you guys have a lot of things to discuss in your meeting. I've tried to be short. I tried to prepare, so I kept to the point. So I'm willing to open up to any and all questions that you may have. I do have to, although you'll probably still ask the questions, the one caveat to questions will be is I cannot answer questions relative to any ongoing investigations or any open cases that have not yet been resolved. So with that, I'll gladly accept questions.
Mr. Bing, we'll start with the commissioners, and we will entertain questions that our team has received from the general public tonight. Commissioners, do you have any questions and or comments? Two hands. We'll start with Richard Jackson, and will be followed by Professor Lewis Katz.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bakeman, for appearing today. We appreciate it. We really do. Thank you so much. At the start of your talk, you spoke of resources being an issue for you with the investigations, and you sort of gave a sort of look into part of those resources being the personnel that you had assigned to you. So with that, it sort of brings about the question of while you say that some officers may be good officers, but they may not be good IA investigators, is there any criteria that you're looking for that the officers must have in order to get into IA before they're selected?
Yeah, I think the factor that separates one good officer with integrity and outstanding investigation skills from another is their ability to put pen to paper. And by that, I mean, it's one thing, Sarge, to write a good Form 1 or a good report relative to a criminal matter. It's another thing to take a bunch of information from disparate sources, both scientific and from lay people, and to be able to properly distill this into a final investigative report that creates transparency to the investigation. In other words, if the officer can't get what's in his head and what he's learned onto paper, then the community will look at that and they'll question the transparency. They may question the completeness, and may have a whole host of questions. So in the ones that I interviewed, I made them bring in writing samples. We talked about writing, and I made that my factor that separated a very good officer on the street with somebody who I want in internal affairs who is capable of creating a report that creates transparency, with the community.
Okay, thank you. If I may ask one more question, sir. So the other issue is that you showed a decrease in the time that it took from back from 2017 to where we are now in the time of cases completed. I do know that you have some open cases that have so far gone 10 months. Um, can you speak to any resource issues that are causing the additional delays for those cases like that?
Okay. I identified those two cases that are still open from 2017. One is the shooting, you may recall, on the west side of town. Clearly, that investigation by homicide has been done for years. That has been with the Attorney General's office literally since I started here. And I don't want to get into his excuses, but it's still open there. We have another case where an officer was charged with assault. He filed a motion to dismiss the case based on qualified immunity. The trial court denied the motion. The Court of Appeals here in Cuyahoga County denied the appeal. He went all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court. Just this spring, we got a ruling on that from the Supreme Court denying his motion, and COVID hit. A lot of delays as you look at them. We have a large, we have a significant number of cases where criminal prosecutions are pending. And quite frankly, and I hate to say it, as being a career prosecutor, but it's taken us time to get those through the system. We have no control over that. Obviously, again, being very frank and candid, you know, some of the older cases, the older they get, the tougher they are, because trying to find witnesses and to provide a full and complete report gets more difficult and more timely. That's why I've been really stressing with our new cases. That's why you see our time limit now down to 68 days, that we really got to jump on these cases while we can find the witnesses. The memory of the witnesses are fresh, and that we can get these reports done in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Superintendent Bateman. Just before I go, I want to step aside so some other members can ask you questions. But would you be willing, if we have some other questions, if we write them down for you for questions and answers later at another time?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize. Gordon Freeman asked me last year to come, and we just couldn't work out a date. That may have been more me than Gordon, if Gordon's on the phone. Feel free to communicate. I did prepare this PowerPoint for my notes. I will provide Jason with a copy of the PowerPoint and all the statistics so that he can disseminate that amongst all the commission members.
Thank you. Commissioner Knuckles?
Professor Katz.
Thank you. Hi, Ron.
Be nice to me.
I'm very glad you're in this position, but I do have a few questions for you. You talked about the category of cases, some of which you take and some of which are referred to the districts. Do you have total authority to choose any case to take into your office?
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yeah, the discretion lies with me. So category 3, the most serious ones, I'm required to take. Category 2, the presumption is I take them. Category 3, category 1, excuse me, I have the discretion. But even if I decide to give that back to the district to investigate, I monitor that investigation and I review the recommendations, and I have in the past and will continue. If I disagree with recommendations, I will make my own recommendations to the chief.
Good, thank you. You said you couldn't talk about open cases. I may refer to a couple and you may put me off. 275 days ago, there was a high-speed chase from the west side on December 20th, where police officers chased two carjackers who ended up in East Cleveland during the chase, hitting and killing a 12-year-old little girl as she left school and went to the public library. That's 275 days since that happened. Where is that case in terms of your office?
If you're referring Internal Affairs was not involved in that investigation. We have a special unit that deals with vehicle pursuits, but because of the nature and seriousness and the gravity of the events that occurred on, I think it was December 22nd, the reports from the unit charged with the responsibility of the vehicle pursuit, I did review. I'll be honest with you again, and frank. I was told I was going to get the report. I apologize, but my expectation I was going to get a hard copy of the report. I didn't realize it was on my computer in another section. So that was some delay. I went through the reports thoroughly, and I realized that I don't want to use the word ill-equipped, but it was the first vehicle pursuit case that I had reviewed. So I decided to start from scratch. I went back and read all the Ohio statutes that deal with vehicle pursuits. And then I went and read all the GPOs and our DNs relative to dealing with vehicle pursuits, so that I was fully familiar with not only the law, but with the GPOs that control vehicle pursuits. I did review it. It took considerable time, even once I got to it, to review it, because there's body cameras. And quite frankly, it takes a lot of time to review a body camera. I'd say if a body camera is a half hour long, it takes 4 times that long to review, to stop and go, and to digest the body cameras. I have submitted my recommendations to the chief. The file currently resides with the chief.
When did you submit your recommendation?
I should have known you were going to ask that question. I'll be frank, it was a couple months ago, but I don't recall exactly when it was.
Okay, because on August 19th, Deputy Chief O'Neill at a retreat with the commission would not give us information on that case and put the blame on you. A couple of months ago sounds like your report was already in.
Well, Professor, let me be clear. It sat in my queue, whatever it was, because I was expecting a hard copy. I didn't know it was going to come through this different vehicle, so there was delay there. And there's no question, I reviewed the written reports. No question, I decided that, hey, I better start with ground zero, reviewing all the state statutes.
I understand that, but you did say a couple months ago you submitted your report.
I will get back to you the exact date that I don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you. One more question. If I may. Yes, sir.
Can we open it up to another commissioner and then open it up to the public for the sake of time?
Okay. I will withdraw that question then. Thank you.
Professor, Mr. Bakeman did to answering our questions outside of this meeting that we submit to him. So thank you for that. Are there any other commissioners who have any questions before we open it up to the general public question? Shelley, are there any community questions?
There are none so far. And so I don't know if the community is aware that you can chat your questions at this time for Mr. Bakeman.
In the absence of any, may I ask mine?
It looks like we do have a hand raised. We do have a hand raised we have two hand raises here. So if the host can help. Okay, now we're starting to see some things roll in here. So we have two questions. Why don't we unmute Joyce Hood first, and she can go ahead with her question.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you. What I wanted to ask was, what do you think was the reasoning Internal Affairs did not give notice to the civilian that the complaint was closed? Why do you think, what held it up, basically?
Are you talking about the vehicle pursuit or general notifications?
General notifications.
Again, I can't answer that question historically. All I can say is that when I became the superintendent, it was not the policy for Internal Affairs to notify community members of the results of their complaint. It is now part of the Internal Affairs manual, and with our administrative assistant, we will start providing notices to the civilians, complainants. My goal is to have everybody that filed a complaint in 2020 get the notice. I only have a few months to go. It's an ambitious goal. I'm going to do the best I can, but they will all receive their notification.
Do you think that would be by mail, telephone, email? How would they get that information?
It will be by written letter.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jason, another question?
Yeah, we actually have several. We have a few chat ones now, and then the next hand up we had was from David Lima. If we can unmute him.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, Mr. Bakeman, I appreciate your comments. I think one of the things that you did was to identify some of the systemic issues that are important in police oversight and the administration of discipline with regard to officers. And certainly one of those is prosecutorial discretion. And that remains a very significant issue that we need to really think about seriously. And the other one is qualified immunity. According to Ohio law, in order for someone for a police officer not to have qualified immunity, they have to engage in wanton and reckless disregard rather than just simply negligence. So those two issues are oftentimes issues that thwart the continuation of justice and liability. The other thing that I was impressed with is that the most serious misconduct issues of the Cleveland Department of Police are handled by IA, and there may need to be some rethinking of the jurisdiction and authority of the OPS and the Citizens Police Review Board to take on more serious misconduct and get the investigations outside of the department and outside of the system that has a tendency to want to protect rather than deal with issues of police misconduct. And second, and there are a couple of other issues, and I'll just mention these and then I'll stop. One of the things that we know is that discipline that is issued by the chief and by the Director of Public Safety differs if you're a junior officer and if you're a senior officer. There's significant data that indicates that senior officers have dismissed complaints rather than are compared to junior officers, where complaints that are handled by OPS and the CPRB are concurred with. And finally, and then I will shut up. Finally, you know, if we decriminalized sex work, drugs, homelessness, it would certainly ease the burden not of the review process, not only of internal affairs, but of the CPRB and OPS. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure where to start. But let me make it clear relative to the relationship I have with Roger Smith and OPS. If somebody calls up internal affairs or goes to one of the districts and files a complaint that deals with even serious misconduct of a police officer, generally speaking, the person with the complaint, they call internal affairs. We provide them with an application. We provide them with contact information so that they can contact OPS relative to that complaint. So we fully cooperate with them. We have on numerous occasions have sent cases over to OPS to investigate. The tendency to protect, it's David, right? I hear you loud and clear, and that's what I want to talk to you about the one case that came from, you know, a heroin addict and a prostitute. My hope is, I'm not going to be able to convince you tonight that doesn't occur, that there is not the tendency to protect, but I can say to you that it's one of my hopes that when I leave this position is that the community is gaining trust in internal affairs approach to officer misconduct, that we look at it openly, we vigorously investigate it, and we come with accurate recommendations to the chief and director that correctly reflect the seriousness of the officer's misconduct. And your last question, I don't know what statistics you're using, but I know of no complaints where we've made recommendations on a senior officer that a complaint got dismissed and a complaint on a junior officer proceeded. But I'll end with that.
We have
All right,
roughly
thank you.
3 typed questions
Yes.
that Shelley's gonna read here, and then co-chairs will cut it at these 3 questions that are in, if that's okay with you.
Okay, and also, if you raise your hand in the chat, you have to tap the hand to lower it. So if Joyce Hood and David Lima could lower their hand. Perfect, thank you. And this question reads, I heard you mention that you had identified over 2,000 women selling themselves to pay for their addiction, who were contacted by an officer seeking sex. Has anything been done since to help these women? Is it feasible to discreetly reach out to these women and offer them treatment, etc., if they want it?
Okay, that's a very good question. We did have contact with a number of the women. It's interesting that we had contact with the mother of our initial complainant. As we proceeded with the investigation, she was wanting us to have less contact with her daughter. She was wanting her daughter to get this all behind her and start a new life, and she did move out of state. But you know, we deal with families. maybe we should have gone another yard and offered them assistance in dealing with their addiction issues. I was not part of that contact with each of the victims, so I can't directly answer that question.
All right, thank you.
But
What's
I'll
the
keep
next
that
question?
in mind for future, that make sure that the sergeant crew make those offers to the victims.
And Jason, you have
Right.
the other two questions. I don't have
Yeah,
those.
they're brief questions here. First one is there opportunity for civilians to, it looks like, participate or have a job in your office?
No, and I'll be quick with the answer, but all my investigators, because we're investigating criminal conduct, they have to be OPATA certified.
Okay. Following up, what is the process for a civilian to inquire about the status of their complaint? So how do you follow up on a complaint if the letters aren't coming out?
They can contact me directly. Complainants have contacted me. My work telephone number is 216-623, I may regret this, 623-5551.
Okay, the last question that we have here is, if a person is in jail, how do they reach you to make a misconduct complaint? So if they're incarcerated at this time, what would the process be?
They are offered opportunities to make calls, and I get letters, I don't want to say frequently, but it's not unusual. I mean, it's not a rare situation where I'm getting letters from inmates, both in local jails and the state prisons, wanting to file a complaint. And we do fully investigate those complaints.
Mr. Bateman, I just wanted to be clear on your work number. That was 216-623-5551.
That is correct.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Again, we thank you, Mr. Bateman, for joining us tonight, and certainly commissioners for the questions and community for the questions that you raised. And Mr. Bateman, we look forward as Police Commission in working with you and addressing those additional questions and concerns, and also giving Professor Katz an opportunity to have additional conversation with you. Thank you, Mr. Bateman.
I look forward to both meeting with you guys and following up the conversation with Professor Katz.
Much. All right, we're going to move on to another part of our agenda. We're going to give our Commissioner community updates at this time. We're going to start with public interest status of the relationship with Retreat. I'm going to ask Co-Chair Jackson if he would step in. Are you there, Co-Chair? All right. All right.
Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so as Commissioner Katz brought up, we had a retreat with members of the Division of Police and other city employees on August 19th. The purpose of that retreat was to try and reset the relationship between the CPC and the city in all the divisions of the city that we work with, primarily CPD. In doing so, we were able to come to some slight conclusions. We figured out a process that we'd like to explore that may help with the transfer of information from CPD to the CPC. And we're still in the process of seeing how that works. We're still far apart on some foundational issues, though. Those things will need to continue to be hammered out. But where we are today is a bit further than where we were at our last quarterly meeting. I can say now that things are starting to move. As you can see, we are starting to have, as you can see, Superintendent Bakeman is here. So I find that I'm appreciative of it. And I find that to be somewhat of evidence that there's some, at least intention, to move in a better direction. And I accept that. So that's my perception of it. Again, I believe that there's still a ways to go. There's still a ways to go on both sides, our side as well as the city. And I think that if we continue in this process, we should get there pretty quickly. As a entity, we decided in one of our prior meetings to explore the possibility of going back into another retreat with the city. It's my understanding that from that meeting, it's most likely a hold up on that. We're going to evaluate some other issues first before we decide to actually take that step. That was the general consensus, and that's where we are today with that. And that's pretty much the where we are with that relationship. As I stated, there's still some ways to go. There's still some foundational issues that we're far apart on, but as far as a working relationship to get the paper, get the documents that we need, I think we're starting to move into the right direction with that. And with that being said, I sort of like to move the conversation to where in the agenda for the things that we're working on and project updates. The first thing that you'll see on your agenda is about Operation Legend and Operation Relentless Pursuit. On I believe it was September 17th, last Thursday, the U.S. Attorney's Office gave the CPC an actual briefing on Operation Legend and answered all of our questions that we had regarding it. That being said, I'd like for Commissioner Lou Katz to give us to give the community a quick briefing on what came out of that briefing about Operation Legend. Professor Katz.
Thank you. Operation Relentless Pursuit and Operation Legend have raised serious questions in the minds of anyone concerned about the legitimacy of federal intervention in local police and what effect that intervention will have on police reform and consent decrees, such as here in Cleveland. U.S. Attorney Herdman was direct. He answered all of our questions. He was candid. He recognized that not all of his answers would be acceptable to us, but he made the effort of responding to all of our questions. Commissioner Logan raised a question with him about what about the social issues behind the crime, and is there any interest in those problems by the feds by coming into Cleveland and working with the Cleveland Police Division as they are? And he acknowledged and admitted that this is a straight police action and that there is no present concern and likely future concern arising out of Operation Legend, going to the very real problem that and problems that Commissioner Logan raised. As to the specific conduct under Operation Legend, it's basically seemed like a seamless transition from Operation Relentless Pursuit and Operation Legend, coming from the Attorney General's office, which itself raises some questions. But Mr. Herdman told us that there are investigation overlapping even before the beginning of this project. And therefore, there's a shared responsibility between the police and the federal agencies involved in Operation Legend. He acknowledged that Cleveland Police Department has committed, I think it was 30 experienced officers to Operation Legend, and that the feds will provide approximately $8 million to the city to hire new police officers to take the place of and pay overtime as a result of the movement and involvement of CPD officers in Operation Legend. My concern was whether the officers, CPD officers who were working in Operation Legend with the federal task force would be bound by the agreements reached under the consent decree and the policies adopted by CPD to meet the demands of the consent decree. And Attorney Herdman said that both the CPD officers and the federal task force are bound by the consent decree and the issues agreed upon under the consent decree. He was asked about whether they would all be using body cams, and he said generally yes, but he indicated that there are exclusions. In other words, some cases in which under CPD regulations, body cams are not used, and therefore they won't use the body cams, nor will the task force members use the body cams. Finally, my report goes to the fact that there are while Homeland Security is not part of the task force, there are investigations of Homeland Security which overlap with those of the task force, and as a result of which the task force will be working on those cases with ICE, and that presents a concern and a problem to me at this point. But he said ordinarily there is close cooperation between the various federal agencies involved in this task force and Homeland Security, meaning ICE. Reverend, other members of the commission may have some comments to make about that meeting.
All right, thank you. Are there other commissioners who'd like to add input in this area on Operation Legend? If not, thank you, Professor Cat. Thank you, Richard Jackson. This time we're going to move just a bit further on our agenda. We're going to move down to our discipline work group, and we're going to call back on Richard Jackson to give an update on the work group, discipline work group. And Gordon Freeman is on the call. He will follow Commissioner Jackson. If not, someone from that work group on search and seizure will follow discipline. Thank you. Richard Jackson.
Thank you, Reverend Uncles. So the discipline work group, we submitted this, the new policy, the CPC's version of the new discipline policy. We submitted it back in July. We had a meeting with the city regarding it. I believe it was September 3rd. If I'm incorrect on that, Jason, please correct me. In any case, we had a really good meeting with Commander Carney, Cleveland Division of Police, and Captain Simon regarding some parts of the discipline policy. This policy is thinking a bit outside the box. It actually checks off a lot of the problems that the citizens have been asking for regarding the ability to terminate a bad officer easier than what we've currently had. But it also takes care of some of the issues that officers have been asked about, and even other community members, as to what they can really expect when an officer is brought to account for his or her actions. And so this policy, instead of having a 3-category format that we currently have, we're actually asking for a 4-category format. Category 1 will still be a category 1, except there will be definite discipline set within it. If a person is found sustained for one violation, that's a group 1 violation, then they will receive an actual suspension, or 1-day suspension for that, 2, a 2-day suspension, 3, a 3-day suspension. They get to 4, then they're going automatically to group 2, which I believe starts at 7 days for suspension and goes between 7 and 9. And when they get from there into group 3, I believe starts at 9 and, well, I'm sorry, starts at 10 basically, and goes, which will still be out of the realm of the chief and over in the safety director's office, where they're getting between 10 and 15. When they get, between 10 and 30. When they get to a group 4 is automatic termination. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you are in a group 4 violation, that is going to be a termination. And so we actually looked at that, and we built another component to it, something else that citizens can go back and look at, as well as officers. And we're hoping that this part will actually take away some of the arbitration that you see that reverses all of the prior discipline, and also reduce some of the lawsuits that citizens have been forced to pay because of what's considered unfair treatment in this discipline, and so on, or basically inconsistent discipline. We built out what's called a consistency committee, and that committee will actually look at all of the cases that come out of the deputy chief's office, and just basically to make sure that they're consistent with what's in the matrix. And when you look at it from that standpoint, they're saying that this person had 2 violations in a group 1. They're supposed to get 2 days. They're not supposed to get a letter of instruction. They're supposed to get 2 days for that. This person was in a group 4, they're supposed to be terminated. It's supposed to go directly to the safety director's office. They're not supposed to get a 3-day suspension. And it's basically just to make sure that everyone gets the same thing, regardless of what your last name is, or whom you may know, or who you may know. So with that in mind, that's what we're working on. The city actually is very open to this discussion, because it is something that basically we all want. We're just trying to figure out how to get there. And we're going to continue these discussions going forward. I believe we have another meeting in October and possibly one more meeting in November. And I would hope that by that time, by December, we have this thing wrapped up and ready to go over to the monitoring team for their final review of it, and get this thing wrapped up and ready to go. So that's where we are with the discipline. And I want to thank everyone who assisted with building out this discipline policy. It is a work of art. So thank you very much. Reverend Knuckles.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, Co-Chair Jackson. Is Gordon Freeman on the call, or someone from Gordon Freeman's search and seizure work group?
Gordon is still not in attendance. He did say he's going to try and get here as soon as possible, but he has not popped in yet.
All right, we'll move forward. Officers Wellness, Dr. Meg Tester.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Yes?
Sure.
All right. All right, so our work group is called Officer Wellness Work Group, and we have a group of psychiatrists, social workers. There's other commissioners on the group. Commissioner Marion and Commissioner Hadley have been there, Commissioner Jackson, and also Gail has been there as well, Commissioner. So our goal is just to look at the current wellness policies of the police department and to make some recommendations to better protect the officers' wellness. We're in the initial stages of our group. So what we've done so far is do a literature review of best practices in officer wellness, and we're creating a survey for needs assessment. So once we finalize the survey, we're going to get input from the police department and EAP there, and then work on our recommendations. I'll entertain any questions. I want to try to keep it brief and simple, but if anyone has any questions or if any other commissioners have something to add.
We can have the questions for the work group in the community comment period, unless
Okay, great.
other peer commissioners have a question for you, that's fine.
Okay, wonderful.
For community questions until we reach the comment period.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Tester. Gil Maxwell, homicide investigations from the community perspective. Commissioner Maxwell, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
we are just at the beginning. We are at the beginning stages where we're trying to contact the loved ones of homicide victims, and we're finding it a little difficult to be able to contact these people. We're doing everything that we can, and at this time, if there's anyone listening who knows of someone, we would love to have them contact us. I promise we are very gentle and respectful, but we're trying to find out what they experienced with the homicide unit to see if there are things that our homicide unit can do to be better. And we then next month we'll start to bring in other professionals and look at staffing and better ways to maybe raise the clearance rate for the homicide investigations. It's my understanding that homicides are up 40% this year. And on the internet, I also understand that Cleveland is now considered the 5th most dangerous city. So I think it would be a good thing if we could we could help the homicide unit do a better job. And the number to call would be Miss Williams' phone number, which is 216-857-3114. And that would be for anyone to call who would like to participate and be interviewed by us and tell us what they experienced. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Maxwell. I'm delighted tonight to introduce and present something that I think has been in the work for the last year or so, and that is a youth work group that we will be beginning in the very near future. Commissioners that are working on that is Commissioners Echols, Katz, and Hadley. The youth work group will be called LOT, or Leaders of Tomorrow, is what we're entitling this work group. And the purpose of this youth work group is in part to help ensure that the requirements of the consent decree are met and to ensure the voice of the whole community is heard. There's several goals that we have. I'll just outline a couple of those goals. Number one is to help ensure youth engagement that are outlined in the consent decree. Number two, to increase civic engagement and interest in government and the residents of youth. Three, to provide greater social inclusion and opportunity for minority youth and youth groups, but mainly to make policy recommendations that are inclusive to the viewpoint of the younger generations and residents. And so we're going to be taking applications very soon for those who would like to participate, for the City of Cleveland residents to participate in that. We'll share some more information on that. I'm also excited to announce today that I had a phone call or several phone conversations with the City of Cleveland, and we were approved tentatively for a sum of money of $18,000 to give these youth a stipend. So we are excited about having that done as of today. So thank those of you for your work, and so we're excited to announce that today. More details will come further. Yeah, clap your hands. Yeah. All right, we're silly tonight, but that's a good thing. So thank you for your work. Again, you will be getting postings and communications on the Facebook page, a website of how to apply and be a part of the youth work group Leaders of Tomorrow. We're looking forward to working with that population, and stay tuned for more information. For those of you that may be interested or know someone who's interested, Ms. Shelley Williams will be our contact person, and she will certainly reach out to all on the networks where the youth are available and accessible. Twitter, I don't know what all they call it, so laugh at me, but that's just how far gone I am. Commissioner Jackson, you can't laugh at me, all right? All right, so anyway, we look forward to being a part of that work. So thank you for your support, commissioners. And we're going to have Commissioner Hadley. She's going to come and talk about the community and problem-oriented policing in CPOP. She's going to give us an update on CPOP. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. CPOP, we just recently had our first meeting about a week ago, and Commissioner Jackson joins me with that along with the staff, the CPC staff. We had a really good first meeting. Our first meeting really entailed just for everyone to get an idea of what CPOP is and how it fits in with the consent decree. This particular work group is to really have the voice of the community, so we can hear the voice of the community and make recommendations to the police force. I'm very excited. We got off to a really good start, so we would really love for everyone to join us. We're on the third, I think it's the third or the fourth Thursday of the month. Shelley can correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that's what it is, and I just want to welcome you because we have open dialogue. We have some of the police officers there, the CEOs are there, so we're just going to try to find some solutions. between the community and the police department. So thank you. I want to keep it nice, brief, and short. Thank you.
Hadley, and we're going to wrap this part up with accountability and Commissioner Logan. Commissioner Logan, if you're there, would you come address us about accountability? Commissioner Latoya Logan.
All right, I thought Ms. Hadley was going to go before me, but that's okay.
Ms. Hadley's gone already.
Okay. So I'm happy to be back in front of the community because that's the purpose for us being here. And I have to admit that this has been a very difficult week for me. With the news of Breonna Taylor, it just has been overwhelming that the charges resulting from that crime were simply that the officer's bullets didn't enter her body, but entered drywall of another person's apartment. And so that's the charge that they're with. And so as a Black woman, I am feeling that this country and police department and justice system, again, does not see me, does not value me, does not believe that my death would be worth more than dollars, which are completely meaningless when we think about connections to family. And I preface that by saying, because I am the chair for the Accountability Committee, and I've been in service of this commission since 2016. And the purpose of us being here is not to get big settlements for individuals who have been murdered by police, but for us to advocate for justice. And the real justice in a situation where someone is killed is that they are still alive. And we settle for justice through our legal system, which would mean that the individuals who committed the crime are brought to bear. And I think about last week in Ohio, bills being introduced that say if you target police officers, there's going to be stiffer crimes. But we don't consider a woman who was laying in her bed asleep in her apartment, doing absolutely nothing criminal, and being a warrant, a no-knock warrant, is why she is murdered, because those police officers assumed the worst of those Black individuals in that apartment. And so for us not to consider that bothers me. I am very upset because at the beginning of this year, Desmond Franklin was murdered by an off-duty police officer because that police officer felt that that Black man who was walking down the street looked suspicious. And that was enough for that officer to take his life and leave his children without a father and his family without his life. And we still haven't heard anything from the CDP on what is happening with that officer and how the consent decree is playing a part in that. I am angry because we had a meeting with the Justin Hartman from the Department of Justice telling us that the officers who were going to be sworn in as federal agents to carry out Operation Legend would still have to adhere to the consent decree. But I'm hearing different things about that. And so that too bothers me, because now we have agents who are supposedly, their number one mandate is to protect and serve our community. But we're getting mixed signals about what that is. I appreciate Lou Katz and all the questions he asked during that conversation about how we would actually address the real problem, because we know Black and brown youth aren't creating and making guns and these drugs in their backyards, that someone is somehow allowing that access here. And without actual gun law legislation, we're entering into another period, much like super predator theory in the mid-90s that incarcerated young Black and brown youth because they were supposed to be so dangerous, much like we saw with the drug war in the 80s, much like we saw in the 70s with attacking individuals who were heroin abusers, and then of course what we saw in the 60s with civil rights leaders. So it's very disconcerting to me where we are right now. I don't have faith in where we're going, because I'm seeing too much contradiction in the behavior of our leadership and what we're actually seeing on the street. So with all that said, and I know you're like, why am I saying this? But I have to speak my truth, because if the accountability committee, then I have to talk about what is accountability. And accountability is justice across the board. If you are a police officer, your life is just as important as any citizen on the street. And if you are murdered, the same penalty should apply to a citizen as you. It should be no difference, right? But we're seeing that not only do Black lives not matter, but all lives don't matter. And not in the state of Ohio, and certainly not in Cuyahoga County or Cleveland. And so we should be advocating against that. We should be asking those questions when they make those bills and they're raising that legislation. With the Accountability Committee, in the past 2 years, we've worked really hard to highlight areas that we need to go back to. Unfortunately, the CDP and the commission have not agreed on what the consent decree actually is and what our role is as the commission. I see the consent decree as a living document that if the CDP does not rise to the occasion, does not meet the standards of the community, then we have to keep going back. They don't necessarily agree with that, but it's up to you to get involved. Raise and elevate your voices, give your opinions so that we can get to where you say we belong. The commission is simply a representative of the community. And as a representative of the community, what we've done with the Accountability Committee is to focus on making sure that we have a standardized survey. And I hope that each of you have had the opportunity to weigh in on police reform progress up until this time. If you've not done that, I'm going to urge you to go to our website, clecpc.org, and make sure you complete that survey. And Sarah, if you can put a link in the chat, that would be extremely important. The second thing that we are focusing on as the Accountability Committee is, of course, Operation Legend, because we know that that is operating without the supervision and without clarity of how it's going to be implemented in our community. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our ear to the ground and we're paying attention to what that actually means. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is look at the city council. Dave Lima, who is an active member of the Accountability Committee, brought to my attention that when the city council sought this grant from the Attorney General Barr, they put in there that they clearly identified the link between homelessness, addiction, unemployment, undereducation to crime. Yet the city council have not increased funding to address any of those areas. They've simply increased over policing in Black and brown neighborhoods. So you have a voice. You can go to your city council members, your elected leaders, and demand that they address those issues as well. You can demand that they are a part of the commission and listening to what we're getting in terms of feedback for you. We will also be having a training review forum on October 5th at 6 p.m. And you should see it, I think by tomorrow, some of the marketing for that. The purpose for that is to get you acquainted with the training that's being offered through the CDP. We had an independent training consultant come in and evaluate the training for 5 important areas. And so we would like for you to weigh in on, 1, understanding what that report is and giving feedback, but 2, looking at those specific training curriculums to give feedback on whether or not it meets the needs of community members. The last thing is I will be presenting the district awareness training curriculum that I provided to CDP for your feedback. They received it and they did a lot of things with it, but I would love for you to weigh in to determine whether or not you think it meets the needs of the community or if we need to do more. Remember, we don't run the commission. We listen to you and we advocate for what you want. So if there's something that we've not done, if there's an issue we haven't taken up, please let us know. Please let me know. We want to do that. And again, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Logan, for sharing and sharing from your heart as well. We certainly appreciate applause in that matter. This time I'm going to turn it over to Co-Chair Jackson as we go into Commissioner business and elections for our co-chairs for the next year. Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So in the interest of time, I know that we really want to get to the community comment period. That's very important for us. But I think that we need to get this business stuff out of the way first, which shouldn't take much time, and then we can go forward into the questions. That being said, we are at the point to where we are to elect new co-chairs at this meeting. So with that said, are there any commissioners who would like to nominate another commissioner to be co-chair for the year beginning 2021?
I would. This is May. I'd like to nominate Victoria Marin.
Okay, Victoria Marion. Marion, we have that. Victoria on the line. Victoria, do you accept?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, Victoria accepts. Are there any other nominations? Yes, Dr. Testa, please.
I'd also like to nominate Commissioner Katz.
I'm sorry?
Lou Katz.
Commissioner Katz? Commissioner Katz, if you're on the line, do you accept?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Katz accepts. With that said, are there any other nominations? Okay. Without there being any other nominations, I'd like to move that we accept, or I forget the actual term. Professor, can you clue me in here again, please?
That move to accept the nominations that are on the floor and receive a vote from the commission. All in favor, if you would just say aye, unmute yourselves and say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right. The rest of the commission, all right. I think that's all right. I think that's majority of the commission, all right. So moved, and motion is carried that we accept Commissioner Katz and Commissioner Marion as our co-chairs for the year 2021. So thank you, the two of you, for accepting those nominations, and we look forward to working with you next year.
Thank you.
Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Katz and Commissioner Marion. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. At this point, we'd like to open the floor for community Q&A and any comments. I believe there's a section here that states for you to text your questions to 216-857-3114. If there are any questions or comments, please make them now. Jason and Shelley, do you have any?
No, at this time I do not, but there is a comment in the chat box regarding Commissioner Maxwell's homicide group. If anyone knows of anyone who would be willing to share their story and their experiences with us, please direct them to either myself. My cell number is 216-857-3114, and that is chatted out in the chat section. Or Commissioner Maxwell. Commissioner Maxwell, I don't know that you want to give your personal information out. You can definitely email either of us. My email is swilliams@clecpc.org, and Commissioner Maxwell is gmaxwell@clecpc.org, and we'll chat that out in the chat box as well.
Okay. And this is the community comment period as well. So any members of the community want to make a comment or have a question, now's the time. I see, his hand is still up, but I don't know if that's from previously, when he had a comment or not. Also, if you're on the phone, remember to, press star 3 to go in the queue. Question and you're on the phone, we'll see that in the queue. And you can also type your question in the chat box. So give it a moment here.
We do have one question, Mr. David Lima. He has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Well, I do have some prepared comments, but I want to make some comments based on the discussion of some of the community chairs. First of all, to Commissioner Maxwell, there are 93 families in the Cleveland community who have been victims of police brutality. And certainly, I think you can contact any of those individuals for their own experiences with regard to the issue that you described. There are a number of, obviously, Samaria Rice, Alicia Kirkman, Brenda Bickerstaff. Those are individuals that I think you can contact to provide you with information concerning the experiences that they've had with police brutality. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that, and maybe some of you are not aware of this, but the city of Cleveland purchases police brutality bonds, which essentially insure the city against actions that the police may engage in that result in civil criminality, civil criminal charges where settlements are reached. There's a significant number of, I think the most recent count of bonds that the city has purchased is around $12 million. And the idea of having these bonds actually protects the city from financial difficulty because they do result in being able to pay off settlements that are the result of police brutality. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I get to my comments is the fact that in Kansas City, all the police officers that have been assigned to Operation Legend have been asked to leave, and the Department of Justice has agreed to have those officers leave. And the jurisdiction, when it comes to officers who engage in misconduct, who are part of the task force, in various cities where this has been in effect, when it comes to these officers and their misconduct, the U.S. Attorney General generally asserts national security issues and confidential information and takes away the investigation of police misconduct, even though those police have been assigned to the task force and are members of the Cleveland Department of Police. The U.S. Attorney removes the investigatory procedures from the local departments. And so we're really concerned about the ability of local authorities to determine the liability of officers when it comes to misconduct. And Justin Herdman, our U.S. Attorney General, or our U.S. Attorney for the Northern Ohio District of Ohio, has said in a public meeting that was held by the Presidential Commission on Law Enforcement on April 7th that the root causes of crime are far beyond the competency of law enforcement and federal prosecutors to deal with. So I think we have to be very concerned about this intrusion of the federal government, which largely, at least seems to me, to be nothing more than a political ploy to institute a law and enforcement mentality in our community as a way of achieving a re-election of our current president. But now I'd like to comment on my written statements.
Well, hey, Dave.
Mr. Lima, in
Yeah.
thinking of time, we do have two more questions. Can I ask you to just hold for a second so I can get to another person who has their hand raised, and also a person who's chatted out something in our question. Gwen.
Absolutely. I will be happy to do that. Sure.
Thank you so much. Gwen just wants to know, believes that the commission is exceedingly important and wants us to continue. She wants to know, how can she get involved to advocate for us to become permanently installed? Is there a commissioner who can respond to that?
I can. There is currently, not associated with the commission, a committee for police accountability that is working towards making the CPC a permanent body, not one that will just disappear when the consent decree ends. And I think that person could contact Dave Lima and get all the information you want from him. And if you want to contact me at lkatz@clecpc.org, I will direct you to Mr. Lima's email address.
And Commissioner Katz, I'm going to, I'll send her a personal chat with your email information and Mr. Lima's as well. And I do see Jennifer's hand is raised. If we could have Jennifer unmuted so she can ask her question.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Blakeney from with Surge, and I'm not sure all who's present. I so appreciate the commission and the presentations and the amazing work you are doing, and I appreciate the sorry, I didn't bring the paper with the number. I appreciate the police department, the IA supervisor being here, superintendent. Are there any other city officials here from the department or that are present tonight, or from the police department? Because I can't tell who's all here. Anyway, I guess I just want to, because I was having some questions, but one of them was about the information that the commission is seeking from the city, and it's hopeful that the retreat, there's some movement in that direction. But I just hope that, and don't know if there's a way to make sure to get our support behind getting that more timely from the city. And I was reading over the monitor's report, this 8th report, and some of the things about agreements with the city, I'm concerned with that they were indicating in their response that they're moving forward, but some measures that seem really explicit are the monitor reported the need for a critical need for an OPS general manager. And so I was wondering whether the city has posted for that position and interviewed persons for this position. And if not, when they will do that. And that goes also for hiring the police inspector general for internal monitoring. So I'm also concerned that the use of force policy implementation, there's training and policies implemented, which is hopeful, but I'm not seeing the effectiveness of it. So I'm wondering how effective it is. And the use of force indicators say that although 2018 was a lot better than 2019 with fewer incidents of use of force, but that 2019 it went up. And so that makes me question whether the policies are effective and if they are being implemented in a way that the officers will abide by them. And my question was in regards to that is, why is level 1 incidents of pointing a firearm at an individual not counted in that statistic? Because that's a significant act of violence that's intimidating and inflammatory in many situations. And I wondered if responses like at the protest on May 30th of shooting beanbags and tear gas at demonstrators, causing injuries and inciting violence, counts as use of force. Because it was very clear to me, present there that day, that incited the violence. So I'm wondering what the response of the police department is, what they call is use of force. And so the same issues with the use of force training and crisis intervention training, those are deferred actions. And I'm sad to see that those are not being immediately addressed. So, and finally, I wanted to know how the police department was addressing systemic racism and how Operation Relentless Pursuit will damage community relations and the consent decree oversight. So that's just a few questions. Now I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you for questions, Jennifer. Certainly we will have an opportunity to address those and probably answer those at our next meeting. For the sake of time, Shelley, is there any other people that are any questions or comments?
I do. I have a question from Miss Lady Red, and there are several of them here. And so the first one is, why have meeting co-chairs? What happened to the older chairs? I want to find more to 5 points action plan, not clear in training in the future. She wants to connect with the lady who spoke before. I believe that's Commissioner Logan. Commissioner Logan, we'll chat out Commissioner Logan's contact information in the chat. The person who opens the meeting. I'm not sure about that one. Police Accountable Chairperson. Okay, that is Commissioner Logan as well. Training Policy, Dave. Okay, name is Lima. I'm seeking to get the ongoing CPC. So I believe she would like the contact information for Dave Lima and Commissioner Logan. And Lady Red, I do have your contact information as well. I can actually follow up with you after the meeting is concluded.
Are there additional comments, questions at this time?
There was only in the queue to circle back to David Lima if time allowed. He had a prepared statement. So, co-chairs, it's 8:04. It's if you want to.
Beyond our time, if Mr. Lima could take a minute and 30 seconds, we will certainly listen to what he has to say, if he can narrow it down.
Thank you. I'll read my prepared comments quickly. I and other members of SURGE have been involved in various working groups of the commission, including accountability, civilian oversight, bias-free policing, CPOP, search and seizure, and use of force. We have been and continue to be impressed with the quality of work that has occurred and the continuous production of recommendations made to the CDP and the city. Continuation of this effort is critical in effective oversight post consent decree. To this end, the CPC must be made a permanent fixture in the city's police oversight system. Concerns still reside within the community around training. We believe expert instructors must be employed and evaluated along with the curriculum that they use. And in addition, officers attending must be evaluated at the conclusion of a training session for comprehension of the material presented. Another concern is with the internal review of use of force. Although significant safeguards appear to be in place to protect against biased decisions when officers receive another officer's use of force behavior, it remains a concern. And finally, the role of implicit biases that play out in an officer's assessment of a situation and resulting decision cannot be overlooked. We believe it is imperative that each officer, regardless of rank, be aware of the implicit biases that they hold. The lack of awareness can and often does result in decision-making and consequent behavior that does not fit the reality of the situation. Through the collaborative efforts of Harvard University, University of Virginia, and the University of Washington, IATs are now available online and free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lima. We certainly appreciate your input and certainly the input of all of you who participated tonight, certainly on behalf of Cleveland Commission. I want to thank you for your time, your energy, and your support of the commission. If you have any additional comments and questions, you can certainly reach out to the commissioner's office. Commissioner Jackson.
There is one community member who was having technical difficulties who's asking for a moment as well, and I apologize for the first time using this. She has been waiting patiently. Her name is Rosie Palfy. Commissioners, if you would give her an opportunity, asking for a moment. Rosie, are you there? Pull up here. Can we mute Rosie? I see she's unmuted, but still have no audio. Okay.
Well, we I think Richard Jackson, Commissioner Jackson, that's something we wanted to say, and we'll wait and see if Rosie's available.
Thank you, Commissioner Knuckles. I just wanted to let everyone know that we switched to the quarterly meetings, and with the new format, we have not been having meetings in December. I'm not sure if we're going to have one this December, but we may. If we do, that will be my last meeting as a commissioner. I will be stepping aside from my duties on the commission, and I will be replaced about mid-November with my replacement from the Black Shield to step in and continue this work. Should this become my last meeting with you, I'd like to tell you all that it's been an honor serving with you all and serving for all of you. But after 36 years of continuous service, I am going to step aside to experience life as a civilian. And wanted to tell you all, I really appreciate the work. I hope you all keep everything going. Please don't let up off the accelerator. Get it to the floor and keep it moving. With that, again, I want to thank you all, and I will turn it over to Reverend Knuckles. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson, and thank you for your years of dedicated service to the city of Cleveland and certainly to the Cleveland Police Commission. Your work will be greatly missed. Your expertise will be greatly missed. And if we need you, we know where to find you. So thank you very much, Commissioner Jackson. We applaud you and your efforts. No, thank you, man. We don't find. All right. Did we get audio, Jason?
We could try to unmute her one last time. Can we? I don't have the administrative control. Sarah, there we go. Rosie's unmuted. Let's see if we could try again here. Rosie, are you there? You are not muted. Okay. Now I see that she's muted again. I'm not sure. Up there, unmuted. Okay, we'll give her another 30 seconds here. See if we hear any comments. She said she's having microphone difficulty. All right.
And Jason, while she's trying to unmute, I know that she wanted to recommend that we start a newsletter, and we just want to let everyone know that that is an endeavor that is underway.
Okay. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to get her onto the call tonight. It looks like technical difficulties are preventing Rosie from being able to make comments, but we invite her to send her questions or comments into the commission, and they will be shared with all the commissioners.
Thank you so very much for all of you who participated in our quarterly meeting tonight. We wish you well, be safe, and until next time, we ask that you have a great evening, and certainly we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you in the future. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Richard,
Good night.
Richard, love you, man.
Thank you. I love you all too. You got good night.
Look, I'll call you.
Bye-bye.